So we will blitz through the Premier League moves and potential moves that are going on. We'll start with Chelsea. And I love this one because Chelsea, it looks like, are being linked with Javi Simmons, the exact profile of player that Chelsea desperately need, yes? And also Joel Hato, who we have had obviously very strong interest in. I think that's been clearly established, and seem to have decided to leave on the shelf. So Chelsea with Simmons and Hato, two players we were linked with and ultimately have decided that aren't good enough for us. This is this is a delightful story on so many levels, Dave.
I think it's brilliant because we've been quite honest all summer. I was desperate not to see Javi Simmons at Anfield, and now it looks like Chelsea are set to add him to their ranks of course, where they're short of attacking midfielders or players that can play on the left or in that attacking midfield spot, which seems absolutely bizarre. And it was just a weird deal. We knew Red Bull Leipzig were going to sell, and it kind of went quiet. I mean, Bayern were linked after us, but it didn't seem to be working. But it looks like Chelsea have stepped right in to do that deal and just add to their portfolio of attacking midfielders. And also a youngster that we talked about, Joel Hato. Yeah, it does seem like they're right there for him as well. And if ever you wanted a good barometer of just how good this transfer window is, Chelsea are trying to buy two of our third choices, I think it's fair to say, in most positions, while we're landing big targets so far, touch wood. Yeah, Sweeney Todd is after our rejects. Brilliant.
You love to see it. Arsenal, who, like I said, are in the middle of some sort of a deal for Gyökeres. I assume that gets done. There's been talk about Etse as well. They've already got Madueke over the line. And interestingly enough, in a development I had not been aware of, you seem to think that Martinelli might be up for sale.
Yeah, they're just a strange club. I mean, this Gyökeres thing has been dragging and dragging and dragging. He's still not officially signed. We had a here we go from Fabrizio Romano about 3 or 4 days ago, but now it's kind of, the United have come in. I don't think that'll happen. I think he still wants Arsenal, but it just seems to have dragged so long. As you mentioned before as well, Noni Madueke, I mean, when that happened, I was like, brilliant. If Arsenal are going to sign players like that, they are not remotely going to close the gap on us whatsoever. So I was happy if they're signing those types of players. Still linked to and talking about Eze, but for that to happen, obviously, because they want the Gyökeres, they're quite nearish PSR, let's say that is our info. So a sale has to happen. Now, people forget about this. As much as Lego Head has spent money galore, he will chop people. Always think of the left-back situation. Do you remember when he spent a load of money on Kieran Tierney as the option? Didn't work out. Done. Brings in Zinchenko. Zinchenko didn't work out. Done, isn't he? Then brings Lewis. They will just cut players if it doesn't work. They've done that so many times. He's not afraid to spend a bob or two, is he? Lego Head. And now Martinelli, who had a bit of a disastrous season last season. Yeah, Trev, I mean, they've even offered him to the Saudi side, but Martinelli doesn't seem keen. Doesn't seem like there's many takers because of the price they want. But Arsenal would happily sell Martinelli right now.
Can I ask something that's inspired by something mentioned there in the chat? And apologies, I didn't catch your name as it was flitting by. Is there a world where there's a little bit of a flip around and the Gyökeres thing dies a death, and Arsenal now seeing an opportunity go balls out for Isak? Because we know they're willing to spend as much money as Lego Head decides he wants to throw at the wall. He really is he has been backed. Is that even remotely possible, do you think?
I don't think they've got those finances right now, hence trying to sell Martinelli to look at Eze and other players as well as Gyökeres. I think for all the talk, Gyökeres still, and obviously you're working in pound euros conversions according to the reports, it still seems like he will be around £60 million less than Isak if that fee is to get done, isn't it? And I don't think without selling that player like a Martinelli, they can make the jump. I think as well, Arsenal also know they've put all their eggs and really tried to go down the other route when Isak's turned them down early doors, which was great. So you never say never, but I just can't see that one at all.
Yeah, just wanted to address a concern. I see another person or two people with the word worried. Lads, enjoy this. This is fun. Yeah. Genuinely enjoy this. Newcastle are up next. It's not going well for them. Let's just say that. It looks like they're going to lose their star man. They have had, knockbacks by high-level players like Cunha and Buemo, young Delap. We famously Ekitike as well. João Pedro. My God, it's not going well for Newcastle. The little 16-year-old boy on growth hormones that is Eddie Howe, I just think he must be really hitting a little bit of a wall at this stage. I imagine the frustration levels are very, very high. The only links we're seeing are people like Vissa. Can you explain why, with all the money that they have, it's so difficult for them to attract, given the Champions League as a carrot, players of the likes of the level of Cunha and Mbuemo choosing United over them? I find that must be massively disheartening for them.
I think it is. There's still always a reality in football in terms of even when clubs get money, you've still got to build your brand, haven't you, and your reputation. People forget that how long Manchester City had to get to the level they're at now and how long it took with when the Thai Prime Minister owned them and all those players they bought, like Rabi. You have to go through that cycle. You can't just build a reputation. And I think Newcastle are ultimately finding out that, no disrespect to them, because I've got a lot of time for Newcastle, but United, a million times a bigger name, even with their current situation. Players will pick clubs like United and Chelsea a little bit because of the name and also because of wages at the same time. Newcastle seem to have set this level, isn't it? This room at 150 grand a week, which is, along with the legacy element, has cost them, like you say, Delap, Cunha, and Buemo. Ekitike didn't really want to go there. James Trafford, the keeper, they messed around with that all summer, and now he looks like he's heading to Manchester City. I mean, even the Conor Gallagher thing they were messing with, and, Vissa, they lowballed as well, didn't it? I mean, the thing, though, that it comes back to for me, who would have thought it would have been a bad idea to let your manager control all the transfers and let him put his nephew in there as well as his assistant type of thing? Like, who would have thought, Trev, that could be disastrous? And also, people are ignoring this with Newcastle. They have a lot of players over 30. They were the oldest average age, in the Premier League. That squad needs a lot of work. And you think of some of their heroes or players who did well for them last season, like Dan Burn, 33. I think the winger, Jacob Murphy, I think he's 32. There's a lot of old players like Shaw, isn't there, at Newcastle. The average age of that squad really needs to come down. And they are struggling to get anyone through the door at the moment, which also adds to the bit of, if you do just accept that Isak money, by the way, you can start buying players and improve your squad that way at the same time.
Yeah, and just to address, I see Alejandro saying he doesn't think it's Eddie Howe's fault. I actually don't really think it's necessarily Eddie Howe's fault either. What I do think is it might be Newcastle's fault because Eddie Howe is there. And I don't mean that as a criticism directly of Eddie Howe. What I'm saying is, if Newcastle, I don't understand where they are in their stage of development. When City were like this, they were appointing big name managers regardless. Yeah, they were buying big stars. I've always said this, that I could not believe Eddie Howe scraped in every year that he has so far. 100%. And I keep waiting for them to make this big, attractive proposition for footballers to work with as their head man there, and it's not happening. And it's not Eddie Howe's fault that he's Eddie Howe. He's clearly a good coach. I just find it weird that they're doing this kind of they're still with him, as opposed to going for someone really high profile who might help them swing a few deals. Anyway, that's just that. Next story.
Just on that, no, you're so right. It's smart to say. You look through the Premier League, Everton got Carlo Ancelotti to Goodison Park, and look at all the players he got when you stuck the money up. Like you said, City, they got the Pellegrinis, the Mancinis because of the money. It's not trying to be derogatory about Eddie Howe, but he's not got that pull, has he? Whereas if they spent money on a big managerial appointment, players would go, tell you what, if so-and-so's in charge, I'll take a gamble on this one.
Yeah, it's just really jarred with me lately. Going into this stage last season, I couldn't believe he was still there. Anyway, they have their plan and they're sticking to it. We'll go to United next, Dave, and they seem to be, again, of course, it's Man United. They're going to do business. I don't know that they're necessarily able to get the exact type of player they want. They have signed good footballers. And again, it will depend on the blend and the mix and how they go under the new manager. Maybe he'll come out of the traps flying this year. But what I find interesting is that they're not being able to do the business they want to do. For example, they're struggling to get rid of Garnacho. Talk to us about what's happening there, because there seems to be a bit of tension with Villa.
Just why I'm doing that, just a shout out to all the Geordies, especially Geordie T 1974, who sent me a DM saying, "You took shit, eat my ass." So good evening, Geordie T 1974. Good to see you, a listening and loyal viewer. But anyway,
thanks for the watch. All helps in the stats, lad. Fair play to you.
It'd be nice, Geordie T, if you could stick a like on there as well. But anyway, going there. So, I mean, United have been funny, haven't they? Because that Embuemo thing just went on and on and on. And eventually, they paid the full price for that haggling and messing around. They just drew it out for absolutely no reason. And in terms of weird offers, as is said there from John Percy, the Telegraph, a loan offer to Villa for Emi Martinez, when Villa instantly, what are you talking about? Loan you Emi Martinez, you pay the fee, or it doesn't happen. But also an inquiry for Ollie Watkins, who I'm not saying he's a bad player at all, don't get me wrong, but I think he is 29 now as well, isn't he, Ollie Watkins? He is knocking on. It just seems a strange move. So they are trying to get players through the door, but they've not had the best of summers, even with Kuna and Embuemo. It just seems to have knocked on, and they haven't got anyone out, bar one player, which we'll talk about. But Garnacho's the one they're having problems with, as in he wants to stay in the Premier League and no one's prepared to pay it because no one thinks he's worth the 70 million quid or so that Manchester United are asking for at the same time. And obviously, there's question marks around his temperament, his social media post, which we'll come to as well, about a certain move. So, yeah, they're just... I think the best thing we can say about United, which is maybe a sweetness after all those years we had in the 90s, they're just to us a little bit now, aren't they, on where we sit? And it's a brilliant thing to be able to say.
Yeah, I've told the story many, many times. I was out in a pub in around 2003 or somewhere in that era, and met a guy I went to primary school with, and he was a Man United fan and a bit of a knobhead, and he condescendingly looked over at me and said, "Yous are no threat." And it stung because it was true, Dave.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about them now, and I'm going to wring every last bit of joy out of it. I don't care how petty it is. We'll wrap up then with some other around the houses news. I'm going to leave these ones to you to order because, to be honest, the through line is not very clear to me. There's a lot of connectors, and you'd be best placed to do that job.
Yeah, Morgan Gibbs White. I mean, there was that release clause. It looked like Tottenham were going to swoop in, weren't they? But then there was talk of a legal challenge and all sorts of things. And funnily enough, Morgan Gibbs-White is back in Portugal training with Nottingham Forest. We'll wait to see if anything develops on that. Callum Wilson, who left Newcastle on a free, looked like he was going to do a deal at West Ham, but that's fallen through at the same time. On the screen there as well, Son, a lot of talk that LAFC are trying to do a deal for as well. That it was linked to Saudis earlier in the window, but we'll wait to see if anything happens on that. I think a lot of Reds have got a little soft spot for Heung-min Son, haven't they? I think there's a lot of people who thought when Mane left or a similar player, almost a player that never played for Liverpool, but you could see in a red shirt because of his character and the attributes. But speaking of Spurs, talking with Bayern Munich over Palhinha. Do you remember the former Fulham boy who's gone there and just, to be honest, just gone into the absolute abyss at the same time as well? And then the final one, your fellow countryman, Evan Ferguson, he has gone on loan to Roma, hasn't he? So he's now in the Italian league. Might well do almost there. Do you remember Tammy Abraham? He went on loan, didn't he, to Roma, tore it up, AC Milan. So we'll see how it works for Evan Ferguson. But yeah, a lot of things going on in the wider Premier League.
I saw the reveal photo or official post on Twitter for Evan Ferguson in his Roma kit, and I honest to God thought it was a Photoshop job. It's a wild move, and I hope it works out really well for him.
Yeah.
'Cause there's a lot of talent there in that kid.